Welcome to MLB The Show, an interview series and baseball-themed variety show designed to keep the spirit of the game alive during this unprecedented time in the world. I'm your host, Nico, and each week I'll bring you highlights from our virtual 2020 baseball season produced using MLB The Show 20. But that's only our changeup. You want our fastball? We'll have exclusive interviews with current and former big leaguers and special guests from both the entertainment and comedy worlds. In this episode, our featured MLB The Show simulation is the Astros vs. Angels opening day game. If you like beanballs and long bombs, my friend, that simulation is for you. Later in the show, we'll talk shop with former Major League pitcher and Emmy-winning broadcaster Nelson Figueroa. Plus, don't miss comedian Mike Kaplan, who will present some out-of-the-box ideas on how to improve the game of baseball and make Mike Trout a household name. And in our final segment, we uncovered a historic clip from baseball's storied past that I promise you'll want to stick around for. But first, let's go to Houston, Texas for the highlights. The Astros sign-stealing scandal rocked the sport during the offseason. It was a hostile spring training with opposing fans antagonizing Astros players. Mike Trout and Clayton Kershaw were among the MLB veterans who expressed their anger at Houston to reporters.
There's a lot of guys that have said their piece, a lot of big-name guys. You know, we heard Mike Trout talk yesterday, and to hear that you've lost respect from the best player in the game, like that hurts. You know, that hurts.
The big question coming into the game was whether or not the Angels would retaliate on behalf of the other players around the league. And it was Shohei Ohtani who drew first blood, as Alex Bregman wears one. That comes as no surprise considering he's disliked in many circles around the game. The big story of this game, however, was the assortment of ball sockers who showed up for work. Put the EPA on notice, Tommy La Stella just cracked a layer in the ozone with that smoking rocket. Trout's been honing his skills all offseason in defense of his 2019 MVP title. Trout is far from a flashy player, but the MVP says, "Look at me!" Number 27 mashes his first tater of the season. The barrage of home runs continued as Michael Brantley steps into one. Jason Castro doesn't want to be left out of the fun either. He lets Houston know that anything they could do, he could do donger! Let's go to the 7th inning now, where Los Angeles forgoed the stretching in favor of an all-out aerial assault. And Andrelton Simmons takes Valdez yard. Then the MVP drops the hammer. Trout's second home run of the game is an Oppo fish taco, my favorite. Bregman gets revenge in the 9th, but no asterisks on this one. In the 9th, God hung up on the Astros player hotline. The Angels blessed their fans with a sizable opening day victory, 13-7. For more on this game, our senior reporter Chris Longo is standing by with an MLB veteran.
Thanks, Nico. We're joined now by former Major League pitcher Nelson Figueroa, who spent 9 seasons in the big leagues, including 2 with his hometown New York Mets. Nelson, before we get into the fun stuff, I just wanted to get your reaction to how the baseball community has pitched in with the relief efforts for the coronavirus pandemic.
It's been pretty remarkable. I think guys are actually starting to realize how big they are in each and every one of their communities. So not just necessarily, New York Mets in New York, but when they go back home, there's still celebrities and there's still people who have a social responsibility back home in their hometown. So they're trying to do as much as they can. Seeing a guy like as young as Pete Alonso really take onus of his platform has been very inspiring. So if more people can kind of see that and be able to harness that, it's going to continue the relief efforts in a much, much bigger way than just donating a check.
The biggest story of the baseball offseason was the Astros sign-stealing scandal. And in our MLB The Show simulation, Shohei Ohtani, he beamed Alex Bregman pretty good. It got a little hostile there in Houston. Managers were warned, benches were a little bit riled up. Are we going to see this revenge tour against the Astros kind of drag on all season? Or given that we've had this kind of cooling off period with the hiatus of the baseball season, are grudges still going to be held? Are people still going to be coming after the Astros when play resumes?
Listen, I think you realize holding a grudge and hurting people are two different things, especially the fact that, 4 players are in that lineup from the 2017 team. So you go ahead and hurt somebody who had really nothing to do with it just because he's wearing the Astros uniform. It's kind of idiotic, and I think players are realizing that. It's always tough talk, I should say. It's always tough talk, and what you realize is that afterwards, the importance of, you know what, beat them 162 times. Make them go 0-162. Show that they weren't one of the best hitting teams in baseball over the past 3 years, which they actually were. Number one, hitting on the road, which is crazy to think about. So it wasn't always just a whistle or a banging of a garbage can. They were actually a good hitting team overall. So if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, right? So I think this is an opportunity, kind of retraining that focus to being like, hey, you know what? Let's find a way to kick their ass every single time, not necessarily hurt anybody that didn't have to do anything to send a message.
The other big storyline of our simulation was Mike Trout. He hit 2 massive dongs in this game. Now, Mike Trout, he's a bit of a quiet superstar. He's not mentioned in the same breath as a LeBron James or a Michael Jordan, even though he is the best player of this generation. What could Major League Baseball or Mike Trout himself do to really turn him into a global superstar that he really should be?
Well, we saw the other day, I think it was on Instagram, there was a social distancing selfie done by Mike Trout in a grocery store. So he's recognizable to some people, but I think that's the beauty of it, right? Every celebrity kind of wants that fame and they want that recognition, but at the same time to be able to just walk into a grocery store without being bombarded and being able to, have dinner and not feel like everyone's going to be magnetized to you and wanting to, talk to you, get an autograph and everything else. I don't think he's complaining about it, honestly, right? I think MLB needs to do a much better job of recognizing the biggest player in the game in, the last 15, 20 years, without a doubt, if not ever, with the way that he's consistently putting up numbers. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a once-in-a-generation type athlete who does it well on every single level. He's 5 tools, 6 tools, if there is one, and humility is one of them. He's not that superstar who makes it all about him. He's not about flipping the bat. I think the thing most recognizable about him is that, yeah, he got a lot of money to stay, but I think every player would stay with that first team that they signed with if they could ride it out. It's not about chasing something, it's about building something and building something around him. So the team has to do a much better job of that. MLB has to do a much better job of promoting him and making him the biggest figure in the game. Like his bat makes him obviously against any pitcher in the game. So I think him playing those games late at night, the East Coast people are tuned out to it, but I think social media helps that. You've got to be able to create these GIFs of his swings and make highlights.
Here on MLB The Show, we're going to have a lot of celebrities on talking about their love for the game. During your playing days, did you have a memorable celebrity encounter at the ballpark?
Well, Mark Anthony sang the national anthem the last opening day at Shea Stadium. He was good friends with Carlos Beltran and Delgado, and I was always a huge Mark Anthony fan. And so hearing him sing that national anthem, I spoke about it the other day when we were talking about opening day memories. That was one of them, of course. And of course, being in New York, there's celebrities around all the time.
So Nelson, we know you're working on a podcast project called Amazing But True from the New York Post. What can we expect from it?
One of the things that's dear to me, of course, growing up as a Mets fan, is having the opportunity to talk Mets baseball. The New York Post has hired myself and Jake Brown, he's the producer of our podcast. It's the Amazing But True. It's been incredible. I mean, without baseball, we've been able to put together some really good shows, interesting shows, and can open up and say that they've had Edgardo Alfonso, John Franco, Mike Piazza as their first 3 guests. And then, of course, we had Jim Brewer this week, who's a super Mets fan. We want to be that podcast that Mets fans go to. We want to be that podcast that Mets fans feel like they're a part of. So more interaction from the fans is something that I strive for. I would love to have segments involving more of the fans' input on each and every show. And I think one other aspect of being able to do the podcast is I can do it from home. I can do it from anywhere. And we are constantly floating ideas back and forth. And Jake is a guy who, again, he's a rabid Mets fan. He has one of those memories of every single moment of every single game, who he was with, how it made him feel, and things of that nature, where I look at it sometimes from the perspective of if I was playing with the Mets or I was playing against the Mets. I can tell you how it was facing Piazza and how, scary that was for a kid from Brooklyn thinking, oh my God, just don't make a mistake to Piazza. Anybody else, but not Piazza. And that was one of the things that our podcast is really cool and different for having that variable.
Here at MLB The Show, we love baseball. In fact, we love baseball so much, we wouldn't change a goddamn thing about the game. Unfortunately, we're not in charge, and the powers that be, they have to find new revenue streams, they have to find new fans, and really that's not such a bad thing. That's great for the long-term health of the game. But we want to be helpful in this situation, so we enlisted comedian Mike Kaplan to come up with some out-of-the-box ideas to really engage casual fans. Mike, thanks for joining us. What have you come up with? What are some of the ideas you have here to make baseball a little bit more engaging and exciting for fans?
I have a few ideas as to how baseball could make itself more interesting, more entertaining, less boring. Like, I went to a baseball game when I was a kid, and it was what I was told it was a good game, which meant that almost nothing happened. It was real slow, just like the guy pitches, somebody doesn't hit. So one thing I think we could add is maybe have like multiple pitchers just all lined up and just throwing like one after another. So there's almost never a time that there isn't a pitch coming. And also you could potentially have multiple batters. I don't know if you want to have them like behind each other. Obviously you want to not have them hit each other. Maybe you could have a righty and a lefty up at each time. So there's somebody on each side of the plate. And, like if their bats hit, like, it would be just like a synchronized swimming, synchronized batting, synchronized pitching. I think there's sort of precedent in that, for the Oscars, they used to have 5 best pictures, but then they're like 5, but that doesn't let the people have like the Marvel movies that they love, the popular movies. So I think adding more movies, adding more batters, adding more pitchers, just add more players. This will be more exciting for fans, because like maybe you'll get called down to be one of the fans, like more Price is Right style. Be like, hey, look under your seat right now. You get to be on the team. You get to be on the team, and just like swap out once in a while. You become the pitcher. Or like the right fielder, if that's still the position that doesn't matter at all. It is what I played when I was a kid. More players, keep it going, bring up people from the minors, bring people down from the fans, and Price is Right style, Oscars style, just like, keep it moving.
We spent a lot of time today talking about Mike Trout. Now, don't get me wrong, Mike Trout is a superstar in Major League Baseball, but he's not exactly a household name. Do you have any ideas on how to make Mike Trout more famous?
You on this show here, you're doing everything that you can. You're getting his name out there. You've got his name to me, who'd never heard of it before today, Mike Trout. His name is Mike. Here's the thing, it's one of the most popular names. My name is Mike. I changed the spelling of it long ago because I was a weird kid, and it turned out to be like decent for search engine optimization these days. It wasn't my goal, but I'm happy to accept it. But Mike, when I was a kid, just for 50 years, I think it was the most popular name. So how are you going to be a popular person? Trout is pretty good. There's not a lot of Trouts out there. But I guess, like LeBron, that's a name, that's you don't even have LeBron who? Like, the sentence LeBron who is not commonly spoken these days. But Mike who? Probably, Michael Jordan, was the first, and kind of Michael Jordan and Michael Jackson kind of used up all the goodwill of being named Mike or Michael. Like, I want to be like Mike. It's Mike, the most popular name. Michael Jordan succeeded so much that you didn't even need to say Jordan when you were like Mike. Like, because Michael Jordan is the Michael Jordan of, I guess, all people. And so I guess what Mike Trout can do is lose the mic. Just go by Trout. Be like Cher, Rihanna, Trout, Beyonce, Oprah, Trout. I think that's my number one. I started this as a joke because I am a comedian and I'm happy to be here to add jokes. But sincerely, I think the way to go is to just call himself Trout. It'll be a news story, like how every time when Puff Daddy changed to P. Diddy to just Diddy to Brother Love. He's got all these names, like Snoop Dogg becomes Snoop Lime. Like, sometimes you hear about a rapper that you'd never heard of changing his name to a name that you'd never heard of. You're like, well, I guess I know now. It's like when you're a kid, I used to read comic books, and sometimes there'd be a team up, and you'd be like, oh my God, the Thing is now hanging out with She-Hulk. And I'm like, I didn't care about either of those characters separately, but I'm like, but together? So it's like, similarly, we're gonna make people care about Trout just by being like, hey, have you heard about Trout? You mean the fish? No. Wow, the baseball player. Perhaps this is completely secondary, but I watched Alf as a kid. I loved Alf, and I had these Alf playing cards. They had these cards you could collect, and the game of baseball on Alf's home planet of Melmac was called Booyah Baseball. And instead of bats, they used fish. So I don't know if Alf is gonna have a resurgence. Perhaps Trout could maybe do, like, here's the thing is, I don't want actual fish to be abused. Maybe get like a stuffed toy of a fish or something, or just have himself be the bat. Have somebody else, like Photoshop him with bat. But that seems impractical. My sincere, practical, non-comedic piece of advice is just start calling him Trout. And then when people are like, Trout who? Who Trout? Like, Trout, the only person known by the singular solitary name Trout. Beyonce, Oprah, Trout.
Mike, these ideas are worth their weight in gold. We might just find ourselves at the table for the next collective bargaining agreement. If the people want more Mike Kaplan, where can they find you?
Thank you. So my name is Mike Kaplan, spelled MyQKaplan. You can find me on all the social medias there. I do have a new album coming out May 8th, 2020. Pre-order available April 17th. And it's called AKA, and it'll be available all the places that comedy albums can be found.
The brightest star in today's game stands on the shoulders of giants. No, not literally the San Francisco or New York Giants. But as Mike Trout continues to rewrite the history books, it's important to reflect on the seminal moments that got us to this point. Where this segment is going, we don't need roads. It's time to go back to the future. Tonight, we have a special one, folks. The footage you're about to see was pulled out of a dusty box unearthed from the closet of a Hillsborough County, Florida retirement community. We tracked down a VCR player, converted the tape to a digital format, and sent this first draft of history off to the Baseball Hall of Fame. They said thanks, but no thanks, and sent it right back to us. So for your viewing pleasure, we turn the clock back to opening day 1998 for the inaugural game of the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Get ready to bask in one of the sunniest moments in the annals of this magnificent game.
It's time to play ball. Batter up, Tampa Bay Devil Rays.
Look at the crush of the crowd. You can see the excitement in their eyes. This is a dramatic day in Tampa Bay, a day decades in the making.
If you ever had any doubt would Tampa Bay support Major League Baseball, just look around you. Enthusiastic fans have waited a long time for today and are ready to celebrate. Ricky Cotner of Brandon has come up with the Devil Ray Rave.
Instead of at the Devil Rays game, just doing a wave like you would see at the normal game, you want to do the rave, the Devil Ray Rave.
Even the bishop basking in the glory of the Devil Rays. I got a little problem. If the Pope ever comes here, I took the Pope to South Carolina, to the University of South Carolina football stadium, and he said to me, "What is Gamecock?" And then I took him to the Arizona State University stadium, and he said to me, "What is Sun Devil?" Right. So if he comes here, I'm going to have the hard time of explaining what a Devil Ray is.
The dream has finally become a reality. Gail, pinch yourself. It's no longer a dream.
All right, Rod, thanks.
She's pitching herself right now, Rod. But you're about to experience the stadium in a way that you can't at any other game. Come with us on a behind-the-scenes tour from the locker rooms to the laundry rooms, coming up next.
Tailgate party on Central Avenue.
Batter up, Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Did you know pitcher Wilson Alvarez has more than his share of animal attraction? In fact, the lefty from Venezuela once wanted to be a veterinarian. Must be why he has 3 dogs and 2 cockatoos in his Sarasota home.
Backed by their rowdy fans and that one priest, the Devil Rays went 162-0 and captured the 1998 American League pennant. From all of us here, thanks for watching MLB The Show, and we'll see you next time.
Like the sound of this video? All of our music was licensed from Soundstripe, a subscription-based royalty-free music library for filmmakers, podcasters, YouTubers, and more. Soundstripe. Keep creating.